welcome to another video episode of Pro Jam, the podcast where two sisters and an occasional guest try to develop and pitch a board game concept in under an hour. I'm Miriam.
I'm Georgia.
And we're delighted to be joined by our guest, my brilliant friend Anna. Anna, would you mind telling the listener a little about yourself?
Sure. So I am a PhD student. I do cognitive archaeology. I suppose the kinds of board games that I like are ones that are generally quite simple concept but have a lot of replayability. I don't like it when you have to spend 5 hours reading the rules. I'm not that kind of heavy strategy sort of person. You know, I like things like Ticket to Ride, sort of Azul, Sagrada, a bit of Caverna that I've gone into recently. I don't know, maybe it's very, very vanilla, non-interesting board games.
Yeah, you're like my classic cafe customer. They list those games and I'm like, yep.
Yeah,
we have those.
I am that
Let
person.
me marginally expand your horizons, but not by much.
Yeah, I think that's me. I like kind of unexpected games, and like Miriam, you've introduced me to some really interesting ones that I've enjoyed. I guess I like sort of uncomplicated deck building ones as well. They're not really board games, but I enjoyed Inscription recently.
Oh, Inscription's such a good game. It was one of my games of 2021.
I love the meta element.
I dropped off a little bit as the game developed, but that first part of it is so good. Like the very first section that you do that's sort of in combination with like an escape room. Oh my God. Very good game.
Yeah, and it's got that horror element. It's, you know, got that gameplay. You're not quite sure exactly what's going on. You've got like multiple objectives. I think it's really cool. Yeah, I really like that one. I quite like Slay the Spire as well. That's probably another like good deck builder that I like. But
yes.
Anyway,
perennially name checked on this podcast. Slay the Spire.
It's just like
famous for its having taken probably several days off my lifespan.
Yeah, my summer was filled with that.
Yeah, my 2020 was filled with that. Just losing multiple. It's definitely multiple days that I've spent playing it, hundreds of hours. But you know, when a game's good, there's nothing wrong with it.
Exactly.
And you have brought us our theme for this episode. So would you like to tell us what you've chosen and why?
Sure. So my word today is lizard. And I've chosen that because I am a reptile owner. I have a tortoise, so I kind of generally think about reptiles quite a lot. And I don't know, I thought it would be an interesting prompt. And recently I was rewatching a bit of Mighty Boosh. And I don't know if you know, there's an episode where they end up stuck in a tundra and they do like a little tundra rap.
About an Arctic lizard.
Exactly, that is exactly the line. It was "Call me Tundra Boy" because I move like an Arctic lizard.
Yeah, no, we know, Anna. We know the line.
Yeah, that's the line. That is the line that this was kind of inspired by. And it was also very cold a few weeks ago. So I was thinking, it's sort of suitable to the, to the climate.
Well, I have realised that lizard is the reason for Georgia's change in colour choice for the app, because normally we're drawing in the same kind of orange and browns that are the like corner emblem, but you chose green this time, and I think it was because of lizard.
I have been switching up the colours a little bit more episode to episode because for unfinished business I used black and grey. But yes, I did choose 2 shades of green this video episode because of lizard. I do not deny it. I make no claims to the contrary. So Anna, did you have any sort of particular inspirations or game ideas that came from lizard?
I didn't really have a lot of ideas as to like the specific type of game, but there were a few sort of things that lizard made me think of, other than Mighty Boosh and kind of weird fever dreams. But I suppose linked to that, I was also thinking of like excuse me, King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard.
Oh yes,
sort of the psychedelic kind of maybe rock band element. I don't know. Are there psychedelic lizards? Are they in a rock band?
Yeah, I feel like isn't Wilson by Fish is like about a whole lizard monarch or something.
You would be the only person that would know that, I think.
No, I know, and I know very little, but I just feel like that might
Yeah,
be
I think
true.
you know more than me. Perhaps.
There's also, I mean, lizard monarchs definitely get name checked a lot, not only by King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, but also Jim Morrison of the Doors was the Lizard King.
Sure.
Yes, of course.
I hadn't even thought about the lizard people who,
Yeah, let's not get too far into that. It's extremely questionable.
Well, I think there's something about lizards and just kind of leading into the occult or conspiracy theories, you know, I think like I don't know, I was thinking about the lizard cult in Root, also potentially the connection that lizards have to kind of alchemy or mythology, you know, like lizard tails as ingredients in like witch potions, and maybe what do you call it, like Ouroboros, the lizard eating its tail, and then, you know, there's a lot of sort of mythological lizards. I'm quite a big fan of fairy tales, and I quite like Russian fairy tales. And there is a character in it which is called Zmei Gorыныch, which is basically like a 3-headed dragon. So yeah, I think that's kind of something about a bit mythical, a bit occult about lizards.
Okay. Yeah,
I totally agree, and I'm definitely more comfortable kind of operating in like the mythical and occult space than the conspiracy space personally.
Yeah, sure.
Because there's various associations. So the thing, when I thought about lizards, I went in a really different direction, and I thought about a couple of things. The first thing that I imagined was that it was a specific piece, which was sort of shaped like a lizard and a little bit chunky, and I imagined just lots of them. I just imagined lots and lots of little pieces that kind of look like what I'm drawing now.
like a kind of little gecko, or like
So a gecko is exactly what I was thinking of, because the next thought I had was I was thinking about how lizards and lizardy things stick to stuff. And I was thinking about whether we could make a game that was to do with that in some way.
Oh, okay.
So like maybe there's like magnetic pieces, or you know, it made me think of sort of like children's dexterity games. You know, things like there's one where with a load of monkeys where they connect by their tails. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, you make a little chain of the monkeys.
Yeah.
And
so I thought
magnetic
about
pieces, there's Schnecty Whoop. It's like a snail racing game, and the like tin is part of the racetrack, and the snails can like go up the side of the tin.
Obviously there are other ways to make pieces sticky, some of them with better longevity than others. But I was just imagining, that was just what came to mind when I thought about it, is I just imagined like having a big handful of these lizardy pieces. And I sort of vaguely imagined throwing them at something and seeing how many got stuck.
I like that.
Okay. I had I guess my other two things that stand out that aren't similar to the things we've talked about so far. Number one, Godzilla is a giant lizard, and I thought about maybe some kind of kaiju game in the vein of King of Tokyo, but like doing it in a different, like in a kind of Crow Jam way. The other thing I thought about was the concept of lizard brain. You're like kind of like deep-seated reactive instincts in moments of stress or whatever. It's meant to be like this sort of like primal part of your like thinking, right?
Yeah.
So those were the things I thought about. I didn't really get very deep into game stuff at all, except that I sort of thought about like maybe some kind of like kaiju game, or some kind of game about I don't know, instincts.
Yeah, I'm actually seeing some connections which I've sort of added to the diagram in terms of like the connection between psychedelia and your lizard brain, maybe. And then the connection between kind of like monarchs and kaiju and Godzilla. So I think we've got lots and lots of things to be jumping off from, but I agree with Miriam that not all of them feel super gamey. Anna, did you have any, like, did you imagine anything sort of gamey when you got started? Or
do you know, I did kind of also think about like little lizard pieces and whether there be like almost like little meeples that you move around as you maybe like crawl through a little desert with like rocks and things. But that's kind of as much as I thought about it. I don't know if it's something that could be a bit of a card game with like different kinds of lizards with, I don't know, different kinds of abilities.
Yeah, another thing I did think about, which I didn't like mention up top, is just like I was also thinking about the kind of diversity of reptiles and almost like a kind of, which is the best, you know, like
a kind of reptilian top trumps,
you know, because there are all sorts of things in that family. I don't know if they're like more diverse or as diverse as mammals, but you've got like your turtles and tortoises, you've got your snakes, alligators, you know, your like geckos and desert lizards and all kinds of things.
Chameleons.
Yeah, chameleons are a particularly interesting one, right? So I was thinking similarly that, you know, there's lots of different reptiles and you could do something as kind of the diversity of the sort of reptile family. But on the other hand, I quite like the idea, or I'm quite inspired by the idea of just the simple lizard. Like they're sort of related. There's two different directions we could go, I'd say. Like if we make a reptile game, then yeah, absolutely, snakes and tortoises and all sorts are on the table. If we make a lizard game, I feel like we're in a much kind of narrower space. Like there's still lots and lots of things that are lizards, but they all follow the same kind of basic morphology in terms of location of legs and tails and so on.
They sure do.
That's true. I was wondering whether kind of we could have something that combines like maybe several kinds of lizards, like not too many, but also kind of have the little tokens and maybe have it to like be like an arranging game. I don't know, maybe
like a tessellation game.
Yeah, kind of like tessellation game. We have like several shapes of lizard, you know, sort of like Tetris style, where, you know, one of them maybe bends to the side, one of them's like a really long kind of lizard, one of them's like a little small kind of chubby lizard. And then maybe they each have like a condition in which they like being, like, I don't know, this lizard likes to be surrounded by other lizards or no other lizards, or like it be next to a rock or something.
Kind of a Baron Park sort of thing, but maybe a bit more sort of organic in shape. Have you played Baron Park?
Yes, yeah, I have.
Two things. I think, shall I start the timer?
Yes.
What was the second thing? I've started the timer. I like the idea of a kind of tessellation game, and I think there's a question about kind of like what would the goal be. We actually have made kind of a tessellation game before. Early in the Crow Jam archives, we made Burrito, and that has something of this, like fitting your shapes together to like fill the space.
Yeah. So I'm quite on board with fitting the shapes together, but maybe not having them be like a perfect tessellation fit. So like in Baron Park, everything is kind of grid oriented, and it is possible to lay out a perfect grid. And I think I am more interested in, you know, the shapes of the lizards as being a bit more organic. So you're always going to have gaps because, you know, they've got legs and tails and they're curvy and wiggly and stuff. So the thing that came to mind to me was thinking about how lizards can go vertical, or how some lizards can go vertical, right? Like not all of them, but geckos can. So like, could you do a game where you're actually trying to sort of stack up as high as you can by like piling your pieces up?
Yeah.
But it's vertical against a surface.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know, that felt like something maybe.
I sort of, when you started drawing and I saw where you were going, I kind of imagined like the sort of pachinko style, like, you know, like a sort of narrow space and the front is glass or perspex, so you can see.
So you can like drop them in.
Yeah. But I mean, that would be one interesting kind of game, in the sense that, just like, you know, pachinko style, you lose perfect control over what you're doing. But the other thing is what Georgia was describing, where there's no like front barrier. You just are trying to stack them and not have them lose cohesion.
They could maybe be like felty or something, so that they had a little bit of grip, but just not a lot. That could be interesting. There's something, the pachinko thing's quite interesting. There's something quite fun to me about the idea of sort of filling up this space, but I'm not sure exactly what the game would be. Like, I feel like it's a fun action to kind of drop your lizards into this sort of perspex sheet.
I guess it could still sort of have bits of those like conditions, where maybe for every game you pick like a different background, and you kind of have to try and stack your lizards so that, you know, one of your lizards ends up against a particular kind of background or something like that.
I absolutely like adding the background is genius. That is a really that really clicked something into place for me. I guess because it's sort of like a transparent cards idea, but giant.
I see a running theme on the podcast.
No, that makes sense. Like,
so I was initially imagining that everyone would have their own one of these, but actually this is, I think, something that everyone would play with a shared, like Vivarium board, and you would add...
maybe you have your different colors of lizards.
So each player has maybe like individual goals, and there's a shared goal as well.
It's almost kind of like the background element is making it feel, Connect 4 is not the example I'm looking for, but like that kind of game where it's turn-based and like you either are like scoring points for a particular like state, or you're competing to reach a certain like, you know, length of connection or whatever.
Yeah, it's somewhere, it is like Connect 4, it is like Tetris. It's definitely got kind of like shared DNA with both of those, which I think are both like, you know, in their own way, very interesting things. It's the idea of having a sort of slot in background that makes each game a bit different. That's really interesting to me, and I kind of want to puzzle out like, what is it that, how are we scoring points? Are we thinking that players all have like a stack of the same color but differently shaped lizards, reptiles?
I was actually thinking about I was thinking about the fact of having the background and how we were talking about chameleons earlier. And we could be talking about a thing where I guess either the background is made up of different colors, and you score points if your lizards are in front of the color that your lizards are.
Nice.
Or just I don't know, or something that kind of plays on that like chameleon, you know, blending in style thing.
Yeah, so my thinking was similar in that, like, I was thinking maybe this is like a really complex vivarium, and that like if you have lots of different types of reptiles, like there would have to be some way in which what you could use was limited, you know, like you wouldn't have access to all your pieces straight away. but you get better points for putting your amphibious or semi-amphibious reptile. You get more points for putting your turtle in a pond area.
Yeah.
And more points for putting your tree snake in a tree area.
I don't know if that would be too complicated, but you could also have, like, kind of bouncing off what Miriam was saying about the colors, is to have backgrounds which have these different aspects, like, have a pond or have like a tree branch or like a rock or something, but then also have maybe like tree leaves of different colors, so that if you manage to get your lizard on a matching, like, in front of a leaf of a matching color, you can get like a certain bonus. And if you also get it in its preferred habitat area, then you can get like an extra bonus for that.
That I really like. I do like that. And I think you could do something, that kind of like how you described, Anna, sort of hits a midway point between something being entirely abstract, where it's just kind of, areas of color, and something being a bit too figurative, where it's, pond, rock, tree. I think you could do something that kind of splits the difference between those, which would maybe feed into another idea that we touched on earlier in terms of sort of psychedelia.
Have very bright colors and lots of them.
And that has also made me think again about these kind of lizardy pieces that you'd be using. So they could all be different colors, there could be like player colors, but they could be like cut from transparent plastic in the same way that the Vivarium is. So that you can see through them and see where they're scoring points, maybe.
Okay. I suppose we'd need to have a way of making it really clear, like, whose token is whose. So if you're not having each lizard being colored a specific color, then I don't know, they're having like some kind of mark on it.
Like a mark in a color. Like they could just have like a symbol on and it be in the player color, or they could have just be like outlined or be wearing belts of a certain color.
I quite like the idea of them having markings. So I was imagining like colored plastic, but just, I guess, translucent. So it would be like you'd end up with something that looked a bit more like stained glass, but it would depend how that interacted with the background, because if the background was colorful, that could end up looking quite bad. But if the background was kind of like monochrome or shades of gray or achieved in some other way, it could end up looking really striking.
True. If we did like a grayscale and then had the like colored, like translucent shapes overlaid over that would look really cool.
Or maybe just having
go ahead.
I know, I was just thinking, could even make the colors potentially just a bit muted, so that, so it's not completely kind of grayscale against color, but just really pale, so that when you actually put the lizard up against it, it kind of gets more bright, if you see what I mean. I don't know how that would work with the actual optics.
It would. The other thing this has made me think of, which kind of goes in the opposite direction, but could make scoring really fun or interesting, would be if the background was like a color by numbers. So you would have your own colors of sort of stained glass style reptiles. And then you have the background, which is all, illustrates a scene, and the different areas have numbers that score them. But then at the end, to tot up your score, you just count every number that you can see through one of your own lizards.
Okay, I was actually going to suggest something like that is definitely mutually exclusive to that, but in a similar vein, like talks about scoring. We were talking about our reptiles having these symbols on. So what if scoring just depends on where your symbol falls rather than like the whole body of your reptile? I was thinking that potentially would like help with making the kind of like pachinko element a bit stronger. Like you don't have that much control, like you can drop your little thing in, but you don't have fine control over like where the symbol is going to be, if that makes sense. Whereas I guess if you're like playing with the sort of whole body of your reptile, then you have a bit of a stronger sense of like what's going to happen when you drop it. But I like both ideas.
Yeah, I like both ideas as well. So I think, Anna, do you have any thoughts?
Gosh, I like both of them as well. I guess that's a bit of a problem.
So I've done a little illustration here, which is much too simplified, because I think for the paint by numbers idea, you would have lots and lots of numbers quite close together. It would be possible to drop one of your tokens in such a way that it got multiple numbers in one go, but it would also be possible, you know, through sort of an unlucky drop to sort of miss one. Do you know what I mean? So like your tail curls around in such a way that none of your plastic is going over the number, but also no one else can get it.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I'm worried about is that like it might be a bit difficult to score once you're actually finished, and you know, if they're all really fine and a bit difficult to see because of the kind of layers of the plastic on it. So maybe we could find something that's a bit, you know, sort of straddles the you know, the two a bit, and maybe having something like, I don't know, if your lizard is touching areas of a particular color, then that gets a certain number of points. I know if your lizard straddles like 2 different colors, like that's extra points. Or if it straddles 3 different colors, you know, if its tail is in one bit, body's in one bit, and then head's another bit, that's extra points. And then maybe if we can have the, I don't know, if there's like a symbol, like other symbols we could have on the actual background, and if your lizard is touching one of these symbols that are kind of, you know, kind of sparsely dispersed, maybe you can get an extra point for that. So if you can see that symbol through your lizard,
that would be really cool. So
I don't know how that would interact with like the symbol already on your little lizard piece, but you know, if it's like distinct enough, maybe that's an idea.
Yeah. The thing that I like about that is that it adds a lot more complexity to the game beyond just like, you know, drop your lizard in and try and, you know, like it gives you choices about where you put things. I want to throw in a suggestion which would only work with the paint by numbers style approach, which would be to think about how color works with transparent or semi-transparent sort of lenses. So let's imagine that you're a player who's playing with the red transparent lizards.
Oh, you're thinking about,
you could print numbers in different colors. So that the thing, you'd have to work really hard to balance it, because obviously, you know, you couldn't have yellow or anything because yellow wouldn't show through that well. But yeah, maybe there are some areas where if you dropped your red lizard onto a red number, you wouldn't score anything because you wouldn't be able to see it at the end. But if you dropped a green lizard onto the same number, you would score points. So that could be how you did the sort of the idea of the affinity between lizards and sort of habitats.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Got a nice idea. I think the only thing we'd have to worry about is kind of an accessibility aspect of like color blindness.
Yeah,
but if we can make it work with that, that'd be really cool.
I think, yeah, obviously like anything that's dependent on color does come with that risk. So it's worth thinking about how that works. I also just think that what Anna described, you know, scoring points, like having areas have a score associated with them, scoring points if you straddle 2 different types of area, and then maybe getting bonus points for matching your icon to an icon that's in that area.
Sorry,
go ahead.
No, I just want to throw us back to a previous idea and check whether we're still in or out on it. The idea that there would be different kinds of you know, of different kinds of reptiles, and either they would have different like habitat affinities, or they would I don't know, I guess if we were going to have like, you know, like snakes and geckos and turtles and stuff, like in the version that we're imagining now, it would only really be about the shapes that they are and not really about like what they wouldn't, what the shape they are wouldn't affect how they score.
Yeah, yes, I have totally been thinking a similar thing in that if we want to have lots of different reptile shapes, then every player has to have the same ones, right? So then does it just sort of become arbitrary? Like, it doesn't really matter, or it only matters sort of in the abstract of the game. Like,
well, there would be the strategy of like, well, my turtle is like a more compact shape, and I can, you could think about how it's going to affect the like state of play when it falls, but it wouldn't be strategically important beyond that.
Thinking about the game as we've described it, and not thinking about anything to do with like gameplay or fun or anything, simply thinking about how it would look, it appeals to me as a designer to think about there being dozens of the exact same shape but all in different colors kind of stacked up inside. Like, that to me seems like it would look nice, but that's only, that's not that important. It's just a thought. Like,
no, I definitely get that as well. And the idea, like, I think it's almost kind of like established as like an enjoyable thing to look at design wise, the kind of like sort of gecko style silhouette, or lots of them all kind of conjoined. Yeah, like
you kind of get the satisfying kind of symmetry, but not quite symmetry of the same shape repeated again and again.
Yeah,
I think so. I think that'd work. And I agree with Miriam. I think the only way in which like the different kinds of reptiles would really be working here is just shapes, so that you could fill up certain spaces with certain kinds of reptiles, or try and get like a long reptile so you can straddle multiple areas. But I'm happy to drop that. I think it's getting a little bit more into the more abstract psychedelic element, I suppose.
Thinking about the like magic like color transparency thing that Georgia suggested, and like how we could like correct for color blindness or something like that, I was sort of imagining that we could potentially, it would slightly affect the like visual satisfaction, but each number could just be surrounded by a little circle in black or whatever. And I don't know whether you would need the circles to be slightly distinct from each other based on color, or whether just having the circle there would help. I'm trying to figure that out as I imagine it. But like, yeah, if we wanted to do like color blindness symbols or whatever, like it could just be like, yeah, a red number has like a circle that has like a couple of little like thorn triangles around the edge, and a blue number has, I don't know, like a slightly wavy circle or something.
Yeah, I mean, it could be super, super simple, right? Like, it could just be shapes around the numbers or something like that. Just
in fact, if we've got like sort of insertable backgrounds, we could have like 4 backgrounds that are pure, like you don't have any color visual perception issues, and you can just use that sheet straight. And we could have ones that are better for a group where there's one or more colorblind people.
That's actually a really good point. Like, those inserts are not just, they wouldn't just aid replayability. They could be like accessibility aids, like you've described. But also, it does mean that actually we don't have to choose one of the scoring systems we've talked about. I've been going through my head like
games.
Do I prefer the color by numbers one, or the one where it's more about trying to like get different types of coverage, or one where it's about matching your symbol to a symbol on the area? You could just do all of them, and you could switch between them, as long as every sort of like every little token that you had, every reptile token you had a color and a symbol to kind of make sure that everyone knows what that color is. And then maybe a separate symbol for symbol matching on the thing. And that symbol could be rendered by making a hole in it, for example.
Okay.
so that, you know, that would make it easier than like, you know, it would prevent the risk of confusing it with like an accessibility symbol.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I actually love that idea of having slightly different games with the backgrounds. That is the game I want to play. That's exactly what I would want.
I think it also kind of creates opportunities, not just for accessibility for people who might have, like, you know, people who might find distinguishing different colors more difficult. You could do, you know, a difficulty level aspect with it, right? Like larger areas and easier scoring if you're playing with younger children. You could tailor games to work for like different group sizes. How do
this means actually like even the like style of game, you could have something different. Like you could have a game where it's all about like nothing is happening for like the bottom 3/4 of the sheet, and then you score points if you're like the first person to touch a target or something. Like
yeah.
Yeah, it almost becomes like a series of mini games.
Yeah. Which I'm not against. Like I think games like that can be cool, and often a lot of dexterity games are that kind of style of thing. Like the game provides the pieces and it provides like 6 different rule sets and tells you like, do one of these.
It makes the game very like, not that this matters for a game that isn't real, but very expansion friendly. You know, like an expansion could really just be a set of inserts and maybe another extra couple of sets of colored lizards, so that you can play with more people, or you can play a version of the game where everyone has 2 different colors instead of just 1, or something like that. The other thing this makes me think is that this would be the first game I think we've made that's sort of inherently moddable. Like it could encourage a community of players to come up with their own ways of playing the game.
Yeah. Or even their own pieces. Like, you know, like open source 3D print your own lizard pieces. I actually did have the thought, and I hope this wouldn't like be very upsetting to the design aesthetic side of this, but I was sort of thinking like you could potentially do something, this is very minor, where like each player has one lizard that's slightly different, and like that lizard scores double or something, like its tail like curves to the opposite direction or something. Maybe it's not even like distinguished by anything other than that small difference, but I'm
quite on board with that. Obviously like tails curving to the left or right probably isn't it, because these would be reversible, right? You could use them either way around, and I think that would be something you would want to do to try and do like good scoring. But you could definitely do something like, whether it's got like a cool crest or frill, or, you know, one of the other things that can make a lizard really cool.
Little horns, a horned lizard.
Oh, so good. Yeah, I love the way this is drawn on loads of things that relate to lizards, whether it's sort of chameleons blending into the background, that kind of psychedelic angle, the idea of them kind of sticking to glass. How are we doing for time? I feel like we've really kind of clicked with what the game is really early.
Oh yeah, we've got 35 minutes left.
Oh wow.
Amazing.
Clearly the concept was just meant to be.
Yeah. I mean, it's another video crow jam, which means that we have, as always, come up with the most proprietary board game technology yet. So on this occasion, it's a vertical board that's made of plexiglass where you add inserts to create the playing field.
I mean, it's not, you know, there are games like that exist. I don't even know what any of them are called, but I think there might be one called Downfall, and like other, there are games that have that like style of like vertical board with clear sides. So, you know, it's not outside the realms of manufacturability.
Well, I'm pleased to hear that. Is there anything else that we need to do to sort of make this feel like gameplay, or do we just spend a bit of extra time thinking about
maybe we can flesh out each of our game, well, not each of our game modes, because I think you could probably do infinite ones, but like maybe we can just bullet point what the different versions are.
Okay, so like brainstorm some game mode ideas.
So there's the kind of color by numbers, numbers printed in different colors where the transparent lizards like cover some numbers up. I really like that one. I think that's so neat because like, yeah, if you're playing with 4 different colors, the numbers that you're ignoring, like, yeah. And then we have Anna's idea of it being sort of about like, well, maybe there would be like some base scoring on like the one particular type of color or shape that you're crossing, but a lot of the additional scoring comes from crossing over multiple boundaries.
Yeah, so you get more points for covering more areas.
I'm gesturing with my hands in a way that's both not really related and nobody can see. And then imagine me doing kind of like tiny karate chops with both hands.
And that idea also included bonus points for any kind of symbol matching. Now, Miriam, you described an idea that was kind of a like reach the goal first.
Yeah, so race to the top.
Yeah. There would be
which I really like for the because I've been imagining in my mind, I'm calling the board the Vivarium. So that this one's like an escape.
Yeah.
Nice.
I was imagining there might be like 3 targets in specific places, like quite near the top of the Vivarium. And then yeah, it's sort of got that like Connect 4 box game thing of like, well, you are trying to win and you're trying to climb up the box, but by doing so, you're helping everybody else.
Yeah. So I mean, this sort of relates to symbol matching, but I like the idea of one that has something to do with kind of like different biomes where lizards might live. So it would be, yeah, I guess it would be symbol matching again. So you only score points for lizards where the symbol on the lizard matches the symbol that they're touching.
I wonder if that could be involved in the same one or have like a different mode, which is like a more difficult one where it's like you've got danger zones that if your lizard gets into that one, that's it for you, or like you take a big penalty.
Yeah, penalty zones. That's what would make that more interesting, like as a kind of gameplay. So it's good to put one of your lizards in a tree, but that same lizard is bad if you put it in a pond. Don't do that.
And I was thinking with my suggestion of like scoring relating to where the symbol on your lizard falls, the background for that game could have like significantly tighter zones, right? And each zone could potentially like either you're scoring based on like color or symbol matching, or each zone has its own number, kind of like not darts style. I'm sure there's a better example of what I'm talking about, but like they're relatively small areas and you could be aiming for one that's 50, but like the symbol on your lizard kind of like gets tilted slightly and you're in a one that scores like 4.
Yeah, I like that. Right. One of the things I really like about the symbol ideas, so on one of the previous boards I drew like an example token with the idea that it had an accessibility icon which represented the color so that you could always tell what color it is. Maybe that is as simple as an initial of the color or something like that. but you know, even if you are something like red-green colorblind, you wouldn't have problems there. And then I sort of indicated that a lizard might have a suit cut out of it. So I drew one with a diamond, but you could have, you know, a star, a circle, something that represents the type of the lizard. And that would make it possible for players who had lizards all in the same color. They could still have lizards of different suits, and we could use that for matching. The idea
I guess you could do something that's a bit reversed, where instead of, you know, each player having a particular suit, you could have each player takes a particular color on a background, and then it's about kind of trying to get lizards of different suits in your color, for example. So kind of just reversing that aspect, if you see what I mean. Yeah,
totally. And one of the things I was thinking could be fun about having the suit as like a negative space in the token would be that there would be this like extreme dexterity challenge of maybe trying to get something inside that hole. So like something on the printed background actually appearing through that hole would be like one of the hardest things to achieve, just because of how it works. And I thought that could be like a way to get a really good big score. So I feel like I am still not entirely clear on this. I have been imagining that the pieces, the individual lizards, are transparent and colourful, and the backgrounds are generally grayscale. Anna, have you been imagining that the pieces are sort of transparent and just, you know, like neutral, no colour, and the backgrounds are colourful?
I've been imagining it sort of both ways. I think it could work both ways. I don't know if there's space to kind of combine that in the game, because I really liked your idea of kind of having red on red, that doesn't score. So obviously that would mean both would need to be colored. So I don't know if there is room to just kind of have some transparent lizards for different games as well, like for different backgrounds.
It's an imaginary game. We don't need to care about costs.
Well, also
it could be an expansion pack.
Like, yeah, it could be an expansion pack, or it could be, you know, that clear lizards work a certain way. Like in some games, like, so you might have a red player, a blue player, a green player, but then maybe everyone can access the clear lizards for some reason or something like that. You know, there's one of the things I like about this. And I think if we were designing another game or doing something else, I might be sort of saying like, we really have to tighten this up. You know, I feel like we're not 100% clear on what this game is, but I feel like I am clear on what this game is, and what it is really, really flexible.
Which makes it, I think, quite... I love the idea of this game, and I would play it, but it feels quite kid-friendly, like the fact that it has like all these different kind of options. I can see it being played by like kids, and they might just have one mode that they like, or it has that like nice replayability for a family game.
Yeah, I really like that aspect of diversity as well. And I think also what you were saying before about this game capturing so many aspects of lizards, you know, obviously reptiles are sort of ectotherms and they adapt to their environments and they're really affected by external conditions. And I really like that, you know, it's about like what colors might shine through them, and just kind of changing different environments and adapting to them. I think it's really fun. I think it's, as you say, potentially a family game, but also has that creativity where you kind of come up with backgrounds yourself, and that can be like a fun little challenge to play with your friends.
Yeah, I can actually see it both. I mean, this is true of quite a lot of good games where it works very well as a family game, but it also would be a good party game.
Yeah.
And also a really fiendish one to play with like super competitive people.
Yeah, totally agree.
Rhino Hero,
especially what's that one?
Rhino Hero Super Battle, I think it's called, is an example of one of these games. It's a dexterity game where you're kind of like building up floors of a house, and the floors are cards, but also the walls are cards, and you have to place the walls in a certain place when you take your turn, and then sometimes you have to like hang a monkey or something from the structure.
Nice.
It's one that apparently plays really well with like large groups of adults drinking. Ghost Adventure is another one, which is like a spinning top adventure game.
I like that. But also I see you wrote down XXL version, and I have been wondering about what the size of this board would be.
I was going to say this as well, because we're either looking at very small lizards or really quite a big tank, I think.
Yeah, so I have also been trying to think about the size of this, and I'll tell you where I am imagining it, and then you can tell me how that compares to what you're thinking. I'm seeing it as bigger than an A4 piece of paper, but smaller than an A3 piece of paper, but oriented, kind of like that. So that kind of ratio. So rectangular and taller than it is wide, I think.
Yeah, I think that works well with the kind of stacking element of it. You do want some height on it. I do wonder whether, I don't know if this could be like in the base game or again in sort of expansions and things, but whether you could have like a big tank for games where you play with multiple people, and then maybe you could have like smaller tanks where each person has their own little tank, and then maybe there's a different kind of game that you can play sort of individually with your own lizards and kind of stacking them in certain ways rather than...
I think that could be really cool. It's almost, I wonder if they're almost like two separate products, in the same way that like the thing that immediately comes to mind is like Sushi Go, and then there's like a sort of big party size Sushi Go.
Yeah.
So that they're sort of like, maybe you try the sort of basic one, and then you really like it and you want to play it with your more intense board gaming friends, so you get the version where you've got sort of individual player boards as well, or you want to play it like with your sort of party game friends, so you get this sort of XXL version. I was imagining the lizard pieces being a bit bigger than a domino.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm looking at my screen. Obviously my laptop is not the same size as other people's laptops, but the actual like width of the functional picture in the Zoom call that we're using is kind of the size that I think I'm imagining for this.
Yeah, I was thinking about domino size, because you want something that's sort of satisfying to hold and isn't too fiddly.
Yeah, definitely not too fiddly. I think that would be kind of a disaster for the playability. Like, they would be too tiny and it would make the actual interaction with the background too fiddly. Definitely, I think just domino size is good.
I think you want them also to be like a good thickness, so that you can keep playing and they won't break, and that if you're playing with kids, they can handle them safely.
Yeah, definitely.
There's something about like that sort of that real tactile thing of the pieces which really jumped out to me when I first imagined them, but also how satisfying it would be to see lots of them in all different colors close together. Sort of how nice it would be to open up a cardboard board game box and have it be absolutely filled with all these lizards.
Yeah,
there's something about that really speaks to me.
So we wouldn't be doing a nice helpful plastic insert that has correctly shaped spaces for the lizards. We would just have a big gap in the insert and it's full of lizards.
Yeah, lizard chaos.
So I think it would come with a lot of Ziploc bags for people who wanted to sort their own lizards.
Good.
But I feel like my copy would probably just have lizards everywhere, and part of the game setup would be like giving everyone a handful and asking them to sort by color.
Nice.
Do we have... So I know what I think the pieces look like, and I have sort of an idea of how the board, the sort of vertical tank piece is, and what the inserts look like. I haven't got a sense of what I think the box looks like, or what I think the game is called, or sort of like the sort of look and feel. I haven't got a strong sense of that. Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
I do quite like the Vivarium theme. and I think Vivarium is probably like a decent name. And I do like the multicolored element. I think it should definitely lean into that.
Yeah, definitely colorful.
I am thinking there's definitely a style of game and name that this often kind of is, and like a kid-friendly dexterity game will have a name that's like Go Cuckoo, or like or it will be like an alliterative thing. I can't even think of good examples as I'm saying this. Why can't I remember any of the names on the shelf that I'm picturing in my mind?
I know the kind of thing you mean. So this would be called, like, if you were naming it sort of stereotypical one, it would be called something like
reptile,
like
gecko crazy, like or just like go gecko or something like that.
I kind of feel like I want to split the difference. I want to walk the line between Vivarium and that. I would love it if it's something that feels psychedelic and yet still kind of hits that mark of the sort of stereotypical name. I know that's a very, very thin needle to thread.
So the thing that I immediately think does that is lizard brain.
Okay, yes.
Okay.
So the idea being that because there's all these different challenges, that it's kind of, it's like,
okay, it's kind
a bit
of
like a brain teaser.
Yeah,
kind of,
right.
That's the reference. But I feel like it's not as good as a more fun one, or as good as Vivarium.
Yeah, because I think it also isn't really clear what the kind of brain aspect of it is. I wonder if, like, all the different colors and kind of the almost glassiness of it is making me think of like a kaleidoscope.
Oh, okay.
Sort of that has a bit of a, kind of
psychedelic
lizard scope, kaleido lizard. I don't know.
Oh, maybe like collision.
Like collision.
No.
Okay. I think it might be a little bit.
Yeah, it's a bit of a stretch.
There's too many connections to go through.
Yeah.
Lizardelic, geccodelic.
But that's the
Lizardelia I quite like.
Lizardelia.
Okay.
Yeah, like psychedelia.
But it's a bit, I don't know, is psychedelizard better? But then
I think Lizardelia is a bit more memorable.
Yeah. I think I agree. Are there particular types of lizards where we could do something fun with a specific one? So obviously we've already said geckos. The other one,
I like go gecko in the sense that like it's go, but it's also like go, like the sort of style or thingamy.
Yeah, I feel like that implies a game that's a bit more fast and furious than anything we've described.
Yeah.
But I still quite like it. The other lizard name I can think of is a skink.
Oh, you know what it would be? Well, okay, this is one example of that kind of like kid-friendly name. It would be like reptile pile up, where the like the synergy is between like reptile and pile.
Yeah.
Reptile.
So the thing that you keep a lizard in is usually called a vivarium or a tank. If you saw it at the zoo, it would be the lizard house or the reptile house.
I'm trying to think of other like lizard names that could get puns for. I can think of like Komodo dragons, chameleons, but they're not really chameleons. I like the fact that they're kind of just generic lizard or a gecko, the pieces,
I like the way that gecko and Komodo sound together, but that I feel like using those two together would imply that there's like different sizes or something like that.
Geckodelia.
Gecko modo is like incorporating the fact that we have different modes.
Oh, nice.
Oh, you know what? I love Gecko Modo.
Gecko Modo.
I think that might be my favorite one so far because I just think it's interesting.
Is there anything we could add with like colors? I don't know. Not like shades or pigments.
I am Googling list of lizards and seeing what I can get. Unfortunately, they've all got quite boring names until suddenly you get to the thorny devil, who's got a great name.
What about a what are they called? It's is it a Gila monster?
Yes, a Gila monster, pretty cool.
I like me a nice Tuatara, but that's actually not a lizard. Technically. Yeah.
What is it?
It's a type of its own. It's like a rhino something maybe. It's its own order. It's the only surviving member of it.
I'm just gonna throw out a pun, which is definitely not the name. Iguana, like ig-u-wanna.
It's yeah, I agree. That's not it, but it's not bad. I feel like I'm at a crossroads where it's about there's sort of two shapes of the game that I like, and they each relate to one possible name. One is this much more family friendly thing that kind of thinks about like accessibility, that kind of aimed at younger players. And that is what Gecko Modo feels like to me. Like that's just kind of very like fun focused. And then Vivarium is the side of it that I think is a bit more like thoughtful, strategic. That really relates to ones where you're not just kind of plinkoing your piece down inside the board, but you're really thinking about where you're putting it.
Yeah, I'm with you. I like both versions, but for something that feels more Big Crow and unique, I guess I would lean the Vivarium direction.
I think I lean Vivarium as well.
Yeah, I do actually quite like Lizardelia as well. And I agree, Gecko Modo is maybe a little bit more in the family side.
Yeah, it's a little bit younger than what I was thinking. But on the other hand, so when Miriam suggested Gecko Modo, she said it's because it has mode in there. Now, going back to Vivarium, it does have vary in there.
Oh,
yes.
Nice.
So you could sort of do something. I'm just going to sort of restyle the writing just using the two colors that we've been working, so that you just have the VARI in the middle.
Yeah.
In a different color.
I really like that. That's really good.
And in fact, how you could do that is have it so that it was as if the writing was there, and then one of the transparent pieces was like over it to emphasize it.
Oh my god,
that's
so good.
So
nice. So yeah, I think that's
Nailed
the brand
it.
that I really like for it. So that's probably what I'll do when I make the thumbnail for the YouTube video.
That's really funky.
Do we want to do a quick recap? Because I kind of feel like we've nailed it.
Yeah, 10 minutes to go. We're on it.
Nice.
Yeah. Would you like me to do it, or Anna, would you like to do the honors?
I think I'll give you the honors.
Okay. So we've made Vivarium, which is a kind of a set of different thoughtful puzzle dexterity games, competitive games where you have a set of lizard-shaped pieces, and the way which you place them in this like vertical perspex fronted playing board, which we're calling the Vivarium, affects how you score. And there are different modes which can be inserted as board inserts, including games where you're looking at like transparent colors that will affect the numbers that you score inside your lizard shapes, games where you're trying to stack your lizards up in order to be the first person to reach a target, games where the placement of your lizards and symbol matching, or like crossing over multiple zones or not falling into penalty zones, can affect your scoring. and it's a very sort of flexible, like rejiggable game with lots of modes and options. And is there anything I'm not saying?
I don't think so. I think that one of the things that we all felt was that this is a very tactile game. I can really this is a game that I can hear. Like, this doesn't always happen.
Like clinking around.
When I'm imagining it, I can really hear the sort of the soft sound of the different pieces going together, and I can imagine how nice it would be to just kind of like run your hand gently over like a heap of them and how they would slide over each other and stuff. So it's one that I think is very sensory, and I'm just really excited by the idea of having like a set of pieces and with these game inserts that mean that the game is really variable. I'm also really excited by the idea. I almost think the box might include a pack-in of a few blank but correctly sized boards.
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe even I mean, I'm a little bit of an enemy of the dry white marker in board gaming because I think the dry white marker always gets messed up, but like you could pack in a dry wipe and encourage people to think about that. The thing I was just thinking about the variable rules and the vertical board is that you could make it so that the scoring rules were on the back of the board so that it was very easy for everyone to check them.
Oh, excellent. Yes.
So you'd never be sort of like wondering how this game scores because you could check it quite easily. And that did also make me think, about like, could
alternatively, or like in a similar vein, it could be Horrified style. Every board has all the sets of rules on the back, as long as they're relatively simple. Like the same way that with Horrified, the back of the things has how you set up for each monster. So you can like have the ones that you're using on the table while looking at the rules for them.
That's a good suggestion. It also made me wonder about whether there is a version that could be played using the no insert so that everyone can see it from both sides, and that might be like a fun thing to come up with. But it could also be that if you set it up like that, you would just have a nice thing to look at. It's a game that would sort of be decorative or aesthetic.
I feel like that would be the simplest, like that would be the kind of Connect 4 style thing, because even with 2 players taking it in turns, it would be relatively difficult if the other player was trying to stop you to get one of your lizards to touch another one of your lizards, specifically touch, and you could just score a point every time your lizard touches another one of your lizards.
I was actually thinking about that, and then I forgot about that idea. I think it would be quite nice if you kind of tried to do these little lizard chains, and then you could score based on it, as you say, how many of your own lizards yours touches, and then you can try and ruin the other person's game.
Or an opposite version where you score points for every lizard that isn't touching another lizard of the same color.
Yes.
Which I think would also be interesting in its own way as a 2-player game. So I feel like the thing that really excites me about this game basically is that I feel like it's got absolutely kind of bottomless potential, and I think it's really, really cool. And I love how quickly it came together as well. I think sometimes that's the sign of like when an idea is really good, is that sort of 15 minutes in we really know what the game is, and from there on we're just kind of polishing it and making it great. So I think all we really have to do is say a really big thank you to our guest.
Thanks so much, Anna.
Well, thank you so much. It was a real pleasure. Fantastic game.
It's a lot of fun playing with the more figurative prompts. We do like to do the quite open-ended ones, but when you've got a prompt that is like an object or a specific thing, you could still do associations, but we ended up really zeroing in on what that thing was, and we really played with that like thing specifically, which I really like, rather than kind of like sort of heading down a direction. I just like with our pumpkin game, we kind of went all in on what it is to be a pumpkin.
That was a great episode. I really enjoyed listening to that one.
We asked big questions about what it means to be a pumpkin, and also I feel like even though we we ended up doing something quite literal in that it's full of lizards, we still did loads of things that relate to the more abstract lizard ideas that we had. So it's a really big success.
Yeah, I'm amazed how many ideas we managed to fit together into that.
Yeah.
Sometimes the stars just align and the game comes together really quickly. So Anna, do you have anything that you want our listeners to know about?
I don't have anything to plug. Maybe consider donating to a reptile charity this Christmas, is all I could say. Reptiles are great. I think that's all from me.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being our guest this time. And listener, until next week.
Good
Cool.